I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we take a deep dive into the profound insights of a remarkable book. It is called What Is We to You? It's written by a wonderful author by the name of Larry Odell Johnson. This book offers a unique autobiographical approach to interpreting the first 4 chapters of the Bible, revealing hidden meanings and messages in the text. Join us as we explore Larry's groundbreaking methodology and uncover the divine purpose behind the scriptures. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Inks and Bindings for helping us put him in the spotlight today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Larry, thank you so much for being our guest today on Spotlight.
Thank you for having me, Logan.
It's my pleasure. Loved your book, found it very insightful. What prompted you to write What Is We to You?
Well, I think it was, mostly curiosity. I, um, I had been preparing a methodology for a number of years now, and I initially explored it using Gray's Anatomy, that book, that technical book, Gray's Anatomy. I wasn't able to handle the entire book, so what I did was I just looked at the table of contents, and I ciphered this table of contents, which caused me to increase the size of my key in terms of items that I'd use in terms of interpreting language. And so one day, just out of curiosity, I said, well, since I have this particular tool available to me and I have this question about original sin, let me just tackle the Bible, not the whole Bible. I said, let me just take a piece of it, the first 4 chapters, and begin ciphering that to see what's really there in terms of content analysis. You know, the Bible is written in various forms throughout. It uses metaphor and parables, etc. Um, and so and so I decided, well, let me try this to see whether or not it's a cryptogram. And in fact, I discovered that it is. The Bible is a cryptogram. And I also stipulate after the fact that I realize that the Bible is actually divinely written. It's not a joke. It's serious business. These scribes and writers were interpreting what God explained to them to interpret. And what I'm bouncing off of is looking inside of that, because language in general has not only a manifest content, but a latent content. I knew this many years ago. And so this is just this particular book and this particular topic is just in addition to a range of things that I've explored over the years. And the discovery was very fascinating.
What were some of the discoveries that you made?
Well, first of all, the number one discovery is that it is in fact a cryptogram, that it is coded, that the language itself is God's word. It actually is God's word. And but God speaks in doublespeak. So God is talking about physical reality and spiritual reality at the exact same time. And so you have to not necessarily, you can't take the words literally. I mean, most people do. It has a primary content, a manifest content, and that content has to do with being our moral compass, and that's okay. So we have the content, but what we need now is more insight. And what I'm demonstrating in this particular book is that there is more insight, and it gets kind of raw because God is talking about the real world, you know, people dealing with people, men and women, that kind of idea. And we have the relationships that we hold in our interactions. And some of it has to do with our sexuality. Words like lust, fornication, and all of those terms have real meaning within God's word. So that's what's being revealed as I do a content analysis of those first 4 chapters. And so, not taking it quite literally, and just doing the content analysis and letting it reveal what it reveals, we find out that what we're looking at here is a cast of characters. We have the male, we have the female, or rather Adam and we have Eve, we have Cain and Abel, and we have the serpent. And we have two trees. Well, imagine being in a sort of a medical theater. You know those old pictures of people having, operations where people in the audience stand or up top, and that sort of auditorium, and they're looking down on the surgery. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we're doing in the first 4 chapters of Genesis. God is describing, what he's initially describing in the first chapter is the distinction between a male and a female. Mm-hmm. He wants it to be absolutely clear that he made those two entities differently. He designed them differently. He wants that to be clear. So when he's talking about day and night and earth, heaven and earth, these are statements about the male and the female from a cryptographical point of view. So then he goes into the second chapter where he begins to discuss that he created man, the male, in a certain way from the dust of the earth, and he created the female. He took a rib from that male and created a female. Now, you can take that literally because he, in fact, is saying that that's what he did. Mm-hmm. But he's also saying that I'm playing a little game with these people, all right? I created them in a certain way, but in terms of his language and the double speak, the rib is like playing a joke on people. You know, when you say to a child, for example, don't touch that stove because it's hot. Well, he says to the male and the female, the woman and the man, Adam and Eve, don't eat of this particular tree. It was like an invitation to make sure you eat of that tree. You understand what I'm saying? He was prompting them to do that because what it is he created male and female, and not just one, two people. There are other people in the audience. There wasn't an audience there. When I say a cast of characters, he's talking about the interaction between Adam, Eve, and the serpent. Now, your the first idea when you think of a serpent, you think of a snake crawling on the ground. But you have to remember what the verses say is that he stood upright and he spoke like a human being, right? So you're talking about this was another male. This was a second male. Now, God did not have to put those two trees in the garden. He did not have to put that third male in the garden. He did it for a reason. Because after making man, male and female, he had to teach them how to think. So what we're learning about in these first 4 chapters is how God prompted male and female to begin learning how to think. And so what they had to do was interact with each other. But what is the first natural impulse? It's that sexual impulse. If you read where God created man and then Adam, and he brought the woman to man, you can see that you can feel that Adam had a visceral reaction to that woman. Oh, I'm going to call her woman, flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. This is hot stuff right here. You follow what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely.
So it gets deeper now. But here is the reality of it all. God purposed sin. He had to. His primary interest was in creating man and woman, male and female, so that they could procreate. He made them in a certain way. He took man out of the soil. He took the woman from the man's rib, right? Now, when we make children, when we procreate, we create the same type and form and action, the same kind of individual that God created, but we do it a different way. Now, when he created them, but he gave us those powers. He created us in a certain way. now we can procreate in a certain way. And that's what he wanted us to do. He wanted us to procreate and live among each other and treat each other in a certain way, properly, treat each other right. But however, he knew that sin, because of how he constructed the woman, how he constructed the man, that sin would exist. So everything he created, he created. That is to say, he created man and woman. He also created sin. He purposed sin, right? And so that's what the third party is in that trio, the serpent. If you think about the word serpent from a cryptographic point of view, you take those letters as an anagram, it means present, like a gift. He gifted the woman with this serpent. She fell in love with that serpent, so much so that he had to put enmity between them later on after the fact, after they had, in fact, defiled the man. And that's what I get into in this book. So we have go ahead.
You go ahead. It's amazing stuff, but continue, please.
We have a sexual encounter here where Eve is just enthralled with the man, with that third party, the serpent, who is, in fact, a male figure, just like Adam is a male figure. And he intimidated Adam because he was technically a priapus. Okay, we're getting into sexual terminology now. She was enthralled with this man because of his physical attributes. She loved him. She did not love Adam at first. God had to tell her that she had to obey her husband and honor her husband. This is all after the fact. This is after the relationship that she had with the serpent. You with me? So that's what we're talking about. And so we get into detail now. The insight is the detail of the relationship between Eve, and I'll call her by her name, Eve, and the serpent. The serpent did not call her Eve. He called her Sin, S-I-N. And he told her at one point, just be you, okay? Just be you, meaning go with your feelings about our sexual encounters, what we should do and not do. And so she fell in love with him. But at the same time, she was so in love with him and not in love with Adam, they developed a so-called game, okay? Where she defiled Adam. And this is where God really gives us the detail. She defiled Adam because of the sexual behavior between them, right? He was the priapus, so he completely satisfied her in every way. Adam did not, so he became sort of the beggar, if you will, in this relationship. You're beautiful, I love you too, kind of thing. And I'm sort of paraphrasing, right? You know, the book is written, so I'm sort of paraphrasing. So I love you too. What can I do to help satisfy you? I see here, I'm watching you guys, and he's really turning you on. What can I do? Well, here we come to the original sin. It wasn't an apple that we were talking about eating. If I can use this in a single word, we're talking about cunnilingus. All right?
Yeah.
Why is that a problem? God abhors homosexuality. He made a distinction between a male and a female. He meant that to stay that way. He knew that it wouldn't, okay? He knew that it wouldn't. So let's educate these people about those relationships. Why is it a homosexual act? Because a woman's vagina is a repository. Semen can live in that womb for multiple days, live. Okay? We know the acts between men that when they are homosexual. We know exactly what those are, right? I don't have to get into detail.
Right.
However, when semen is deposited into that vagina and it's alive, and Adam commits cunnilingus with Eve, he's committed a homosexual act when he ingests live semen. That's the point that God was making when he talked about don't eat of that tree. Okay?
Yep. Amazing.
All right. Yeah.
Go ahead. Continue.
So it goes on to talk about the relationship between Cain and Abel. Cain being the firstborn, Abel being the secondborn. I suggest that Cain was a product of the interaction between Eve and the serpent. He was not Adam's first child. Abel was. Now we have that situation where God talks to Eve. He talks to Adam. He talks to Cain, or excuse me, he talks to the serpent. He speaks to Cain, but he does not speak to Abel in these first 4 chapters. You look at the verses. And he has a dialogue with Cain over the fact that, remember, Cain and Abel brought gifts to God. God accepted what Abel gave him, but did not accept what Cain gave him. And we have the manifest meaning implies that Cain was really upset with his brother because God showed him more favor than him. But that's not what he was upset about. Because if you are into what I'm explaining in this cipher, God talks to Cain about his brother, and he says to Cain, if I didn't reward you for what you gave, there must have been sin in the mix. So now we get to the story. What is this story? The story is about the relationship. Now, both Cain and Abel were married. They both had wives. Now, everybody, by the way, including the audience that's looking at this cast of characters and learning how to think about these situations, everybody is committing all sorts of sexual acts. They're just doing what they want to do. They're just having a great time. And this is okay with God because they're learning, right?
Right.
So we get the issue of homosexuality. So now we have the relationship between Cain and Abel. Well, here they had like a contest going. Whatever Abel would do, Cain would do, because Abel had the stronger mind. He had power. He was able to read other people's mind and even control other people's minds. He had a stronger mind than Cain did, and so they were in competition with each other sexually. Abel was he believed that sex was, sexual sin was okay. It was proper. Cain had his doubts about it. Now, what happened was they each had encounters with each other's wives. They each engaged in certain kinds of sexual behaviors with each other and with each other's wives. But then it was sort of the way that it was monitored. It was sort of a balancing act. You do this, I do this, is balanced. Okay. There came a time when Abel used his influence to do sodomy and fellatio, or have Cain do fellatio on him. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there became an imbalance, because though Abel did sodomy on Cain, and he did force Cain to perform fellatio, he did not allow Cain to do the same to him. So there was an imbalance. And it's clear in the book what I'm saying, because it's very precisely worded. But my point is that Cain realized that there was an imbalance, and he went to him and said, we're not supposed to be doing that stuff anyway.
Right.
then Abel says to him, "Oh no, we're supposed to be doing this kind of stuff." Okay, but he says, "No, we're not. And in fact, if we are, why don't you let me do to me what I did to you," referring to fellatio. And he wouldn't do it. That's why Cain killed him. Okay, let's put it another way. Let me not use that word. The word is slew.
Right.
So there's other meanings in here. Then we get into this notion of simulation. You understand? It gets a lot deeper. So, but that was the issue. So here we have God explaining that he abhors homosexuality, that there is a sexual standard that he prefers. This is what the literature is saying. And that standard is he wants husband and wife to be true to each other, okay? Dedicated to each other. He doesn't, I don't want to speak for God, but what the narrative simply says is, this idea of cunnilingus, he can't have that because it defiles the man. He wants the man to rule this thing down here. If he's defiled, he loses his authority. That's the simple fact that God is saying with that. With respect to the issue of his Cain and his brother, and him slaying his brother, that had to do again with the fact that certain behaviors warranted rage. Okay, and he was talking more about the idea of lust, how to control lust. He doesn't have a problem with sexuality. God doesn't have a problem with sexuality, but he has a problem with lust. It's just like, a person can drink wine and it not be anything major, but if you do it to excess, you become a wino. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is what's being described. So then you have the other dialogue that Cain is having with God. God actually says to Cain, he curses Cain, and he sort of throws him out of the garden. But Cain says to God, "This is more than I can stand." Now, immediately after Cain says that and a few other things, God not only forgives him, he blesses him and puts an armor of protection around him so that no one will kill him. And not only does Cain not be punished by God, God protects him, and he allows him gives him enough authority to build a city and to marry and have 3 sons. And his sons become great men in areas of metallurgy, music. In other words, they're the founders of these categories. In terms of a scientific perspective, metallurgy is major in the world. Music is major in the world. And husbandry. You follow what I'm saying? So this is what's being described in the first 4 chapters of the book.
Amazing. It's a completely different view of those first 4 chapters. It's a radically different view. We have a few more minutes left. Tell us what you think the implications are for the faithful today in our society, knowing that the first 4 chapters of the Bible mean something completely different and point to the traditional gender roles of a man and a woman.
Well, I'm not a proselytizer. I'm a researcher. You with me?
Right. Yep.
I'm a believer, but I'm just a researcher. I'm just relating what's there scientifically.
Yeah.
So because my main interest is language and understanding language and learning every day. It's really interesting that in 2023, last year, the National Science Academy of Sciences came out with a new natural law on the order of thermodynamics or gravity.
Mhm.
And this new natural law says it's the law of increasing functional information. The law of increasing functional information. Well, my book falls right into that mix because in terms of my methodology, that's what I do every day.
Mhm.
I learn more and more by simply looking at God's language as introduced to me through books and through the media,
Mhm.
and I cipher it, and I get all kinds of new information. And so, what I say about what I'm revealing here in the first 4 chapters is if it says that God does not want the man to be defiled and that cunnilingus is the cardinal sin,
Hmm.
then people know what to do. I mean, we're free, we have free will. You
Exactly.
either comply or you don't. You understand?
Exactly. Exactly.
And
Yeah,
and
the
so
rules are there.
just
The
like
Bible's been translated now. They can obey those rules, or they could,
that's what I'm
take their
saying.
chances with what is coming to them if they don't,
It-
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But what I do is open that window. So there's more to be learned from a cryptographic standpoint, in reading the Bible. And I've done it piecemeal around the Bible. I'm not a Bible scholar per se.
Mhm.
I'm just a sort of a technician.
Right.
So, I look at what it says, and what it says to me is this, that lust is a sin.
Mhm.
Love is not, but lust is. We need to control our lust.
Mm.
Think about the idea that, women are all, a lot of women are all for the cunnilingus thing
Mhm.
because that pleasure thing, they want what they want, right?
Right.
Men are into it as well.
Right.
However, what would the world look like if we controlled that lust?
Mm.
And we have to commit to genuine affection because a woman can be stimulated just as easily manually. You follow what I'm saying?
Yep.
Okay, without the violation. And a man's being defiled would be curtailed. It would end. All right. And so, woman would be woman, man would be man, in conformance with God's will, and we're good to go. But that's a hard sell.
Exactly.
That's a
Exactly. Yeah.
real hard sell.
Yeah.
Okay, because
Especially
of
in
what
today's society.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Amazing.
the truth is what the truth is. So I lay
Exactly.
it out there for people. You know, those of you who are believers will understand what I'm talking about because this is on the spiritual level of stuff.
Right.
Okay, also the physical as well, but we're more concerned with the spiritual side because we are spiritual beings. If you understand what I'm saying and
Sure.
believe that we are spirits, God is a spirit, and His language is a spirit, and we're consumed by that language. We live in that matrix. Okay,
Right.
a universe of discourse. All those words, all the words that we use, are created by God. They're created. This is His language.
Mm.
You follow me? So
Absolutely.
that's where we're coming from with this. And so understanding that it's more complicated than we're used to. There's two sides to this. He's talking at the same time, and that's the trick of this language. It's a duality. He's talking about the physical reality and the spiritual reality at the exact same time. The only way to see that is to have a key. Fortunately, I've worked hard many years, read a whole bunch of books, and I figured it out. So,
Wonderful.
and this is not my first book, by the way. I have two other earlier books, The Mind Factory, and my second book is entitled I Am a Key, where I talk about this technique. So I have explanation, description, and this last book is demonstration.
Amazing. It's an amazing book. It is called What Is We to You? It's written by Larry Odell Johnson. The book offers a unique autobiographical approach to interpreting the first 4 chapters of the Bible, revealing hidden meanings and messages in the text. Larry's work is nothing short of groundbreaking, and it uncovers the divine purpose behind the scriptures. Larry, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time, sir, and your insight and your wisdom. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time. But this time, until next time, on Spotlight.